All right, thank you guys, and welcome to our college basketball free pick video here today for Saturday, January 8th, 2022. And I'll tell you what, guys, I'm feeling great on a Saturday morning because we went 4-1 in our 5 premium sports picks on brockpage.com yesterday. And if you want to see which one of these free YouTube picks on my channel that I'm actually betting on personally, there's only one way to do that, and that's to sign up for a membership on my website at brockpage.com. And of course, if you're getting ready for the big college football national championship here on Monday night, well, you may want to think about signing up for my college football tier package picks on that very same website. We're currently 6-1 in our last 7 picks in that very category. And of course, if you're still a little bit on the fence about getting a package on my safe and secure website, just keep in mind that we currently have over 820 members who are currently signed up and active on that site right now. With that, guys, let's go ahead and get into some free content. We're going to start off with UConn taking on Seton Hall, and that's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Now, Seton Hall is -4 with the total at 139.5. The Pirates are currently 7-1 straight up on their home court this year, and they've successfully covered the point spread in 75% of those home games. Now, the Pirates are currently in the top 10 in the entire nation in guarding the 3-ball, as they're limiting their competition to just 26% shooting from beyond the arc. A lot of good stuff happening with this Seton Hall club. Now, scoring-wise, Jared Rhoden's dropping over 16 points a night, along with 7 rebounds. Meanwhile, teammate Bryce Aiken is scoring over a dozen points a game himself, along with 2 rebounds and a couple assists. Now, they're taking on a UConn team who's actually struggled to cover the point spread here recently. As a matter of fact, the Huskies failed to cover the number against the likes of Providence, VCU, and Maryland Eastern Shore during that stretch. So we got a power program, kind of a mid-tier program, and then kind of like a lower tier program, and they failed to cover the number against all 3 of those guys. Now, the Huskies are officially shooting just 24% from beyond the arc when traveling, really just little threat shooting the 3-ball on the road. And when it comes to the total in this one, UConn saw unders against the likes of Providence, West Virginia, and Michigan State here recently. So when they do play against those, top-tier teams, we are seeing a good bit of unders for UConn. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, 3 out of Seton Hall's last 5 fell under the posted total themselves. I'm going to lean towards Seton Hall -4 and the under 139.5. Next ball game, Big Ten action. I'm talking about Purdue versus Penn State, 12 o'clock East. Purdue's -9.5 with the total at 138. Now, Purdue's one of the best scoring teams in the entire country. They're making 51% of their shots from the field, and they're averaging 86 points a game. The Boilermakers have also been dangerous shooting from downtown as well. They're making nearly 42% of their 3 balls as a team. Now, Jaden Ivey, he's drilling 45% of his 3-pointers. He's also averaging 16.5 points a game. Meanwhile, teammate Travion Williams is making 43% of his 3-pointers himself and averages also 13 points a game. Purdue's currently 12-2 straight up thus far in the season. They're taking on a Penn State team who failed to cover in 5 out of their last 7 at the Bryce Jordan Center, kind of struggling covering the number at home. Now, the Nittany Lions are also scoring only 69 points a game in front of their home fans, and they're struggling to get offensive rebounds. When it comes to the number in this one, 4 out of Penn State's last 5 outings did get over the posted total. Meanwhile, Purdue saw 3 out of their last 5 get over the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Purdue -9.5 and the over 138. Next ball game, it is going to be Virginia versus UNC, and that's going to be a 1 o'clock Eastern start time. North Carolina's -5 with the total at 132. Now, the Tar Heels got the W in 7 out of their last 9 ball games, and they're currently undefeated in Chapel Hill. Armando Bacot is scoring over 15.5 points a game, along with double-digit rebounds. Meanwhile, teammate R.J. Davis, He's been dangerous from beyond the arc. He's drilling 46% of his three-pointers. He's also averaging over 13.5 points a game himself. And speaking of three-pointers, the Tar Heels are one of the best three-point shooting teams in the entire country. They're making 40% of their three-pointers as a team, and they currently rank in the top 10 in the country in that particular category. Now they're squaring off against a Virginia team who's certainly not built for a track meet, and in addition to failing to cover in 5 out of their last 8 ball games, the Cavaliers are averaging just 60 points a game on the road, and they're making only 27% of their shots from downtown. This is a Virginia program who's really put little emphasis on scoring over the past couple of seasons. They're great defensively, but like I said, not built for a track meet. Now, total-wise, oddly enough, 5 out of Virginia's last 7 did get over the posted number. Meanwhile, North Carolina went 3-1 to the over in their last 4 themselves. I'm going to lean toward UNC -5 in the over 132. Next matchup, it is going to be in the Big 12. I'm talking about Texas versus Oklahoma State, and that's going to be a 2 o'clock Eastern tip-off. The Texas Longhorns are -2.5 on the road with the total at 128. But despite being favored in this one, the Longhorns failed to cover in 4 out of their last 7 ball games. As a matter of fact, Texas failed to cover against the likes of Alabama State and Arkansas Pine Bluff during that stretch I just mentioned. Longhorns are scoring just 66 points a game away from home, and they're making only 27% of their three-pointers in that same category. We are looking at significant offensive struggles. Now they're taking on an Oklahoma State team who's limiting their competition to just 39% shooting from the field themselves. I mean, this is a kind of a formula that benefits Oklahoma State in this spot here. Of course, when it comes to the scoring in this one, Avery Anderson's averaging nearly 12 points a game, along with 2 rebounds and a couple of steals. Meanwhile, Bryce Williams is dropping 11.5 points a game himself, along with a couple of boards and a couple of steals as well. Now, total-wise, the Beavs saw 3 out of their last 5 fall under the line. Meanwhile, Texas went 5-2 to the under in their last 7 themselves. Maybe the Beavs will be inspired after they imploded their home side stands at their football stadium yesterday. That was a great viral video. But anyway, I'm going to lean toward Oklahoma State +2.5 in the under 128. Next game, Big East action. I'm talking about Villanova versus DePaul, and that's going to be a 2 o'clock Eastern start time. Now, Villanova's -8.5 on the road with the total at 137, but despite being favored in this one by nearly double digits, Villanova is scoring only 66 points a game away from home, and they're making only 37% of their shots from the field in that same category. They're taking on a DePaul team who won 7 of 9 at home themselves, and they only failed to cover the number just twice during that stretch. A lot of covers during that span. Now, Javon Freeman Liberty is scoring over 20.5 points a game, along with 7 boards and 3.5 assists. Meanwhile, David Jones is scoring nearly 16 points a game himself, along with 8 rebounds and a couple assists as well. DePaul, believe it or not, is actually one of the better scoring teams in the Big East, as they're averaging 78 points a game. And the Blue Demons are also in the top 30 in the nation in offensive rebounding. A lot of good stuff happening with DePaul early in the season here. And when it comes to the total in this one, DePaul saw overs recently against the likes of St. John's, Duquesne, and Eastern Michigan. Meanwhile, Nova saw overs recently with Seton Hall, Creighton, and Purdue themselves. A lot of overs in these Big East games here over the past week or so. I'm going to lean toward DePaul +8.5 in the over 137. All right, next ball game, Big Ten action. I'm talking about Michigan State versus Michigan, and that's going to be a 2:30 Eastern tip-off. Now, the Michigan Wolverines are -2.5 at home with the total at 142. And although the Wolverines are favored in this one, they did lose 3 out of their last 4, not playing their best basketball right now. And they also posted a record of just 3-6 against the spread in their last 9. Now, the Wolverines have been little threat shooting the three ball this year. They're making only 31% of their three balls at the Chrysler Center. They're also making only 63% of their free throws on their home court as well. If I was Sparty, I'd just put them to the line because Michigan is not making their opponents pay when they foul them. Now, Michigan's taking on a red-hot Spartan team who's on an 8-game winning streak, and they also got the W in 13 out of their last 15 ball games. Gabe Brown scoring 14.5 points per contest, along with 4 rebounds and 40% shooting from three-land. Meanwhile, Marcus Bingham scoring 10.5 points a game himself, along with 7 rebounds. Sparty scoring 76 points a game on average. They're also in the top 10 of the country in shooting the three ball. And when it comes to the number in this one, Michigan State went 6-1 to the over in their last 7 outings. Meanwhile, the Wolverines saw 5 out of their last 6 get over the posted total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Michigan State plus 2.5 in the over 142. Next matchup, it is going to be Colorado State versus San Diego State, and that's going to be a 4 o'clock Eastern start time. The San Diego State Aztecs are -3 with the total at 134.5. But despite being favored at home here, the Aztecs failed to cover recently against the likes of Cal State Fullerton, Texas Arlington, and Arizona State. Now, the Aztecs have also been pretty bad scoring with the basketball. They're averaging only 64 points a game, and they're amongst the worst in the Mountain West in offensive rebounding. They're squaring off against an undefeated Colorado State team who scores 82 points a night themselves, and they're drilling over 42% of their three balls as a team. As a matter of fact, the Rams are currently in the top 3 in the entire country in offensive field goal percentage, and they're also in the top 3 in shooting the three ball as well. David Roddy is averaging nearly 20 points a game, along with 8 boards and 43% shooting from three-land. Meanwhile, teammate John Tanji is making 56% of his three-pointers himself. He's averaging nearly a dozen a game as well. Now, total-wise, Colorado State saw their last 4 straight all fall under the posted number. Meanwhile, the San Diego State Aztecs, on the other side of things, went 70% to the under in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Colorado State plus 3 and the under 134.5. Next contest, it is going to be Kansas versus Texas Tech, and that's going to be a 4 o'clock Eastern tip-off. The Kansas Jayhawks are -4.5 with the total at 139. But despite being favored on the road here, Kansas has failed to cover the number here recently against the likes of George Mason, San Francisco, and Iona. Now, the Jayhawks have struggled defensively away from home this year. They're allowing 74 points per contest away from their home court. And they're also letting their opponents make nearly 40% of their three-pointers against them in that very same category. So certainly some things to worry about. Now, they're squaring off against a Texas Tech team who's a perfect 8-0 straight up at the United Supermarkets Arena. Great name. Gotta love it. Terrence Shannon is averaging 14 points a game along with 3 rebounds, couple assists. Now, keep an eye on Shannon's status. He has been banged up here recently. I'm optimistic he's going to play, but just keep an eye on him. You just never know in this COVID era who's going to be in and who's going to be out by tip-off. But anyway, teammate Bryson Williams, he's drilling nearly 43% of his three-pointers and averages almost a dozen a game. Now, offense aside, though, it's actually the defensive play of Texas Tech that's been their strength. They're currently in the top 10 in the nation in defensive rebounding, and they're limiting their competition to just 57 points a game. So like I said, even if Shannon doesn't end up playing, it's really this defensive effort from the Red Raiders that keep these guys going. Now, they're also holding their opponents to just 37% shooting from the field. When it comes to the total in this one, the Red Raiders' last 6 straight ball games all fell under the posted number. Meanwhile, Kansas went 3-0 to the under in their last 3 straight themselves. I'm going to lean toward Texas Tech plus 4.5 and the under 139. Next ball game, it is going to be Baylor versus TCU, and that's going to be a 5 o'clock Eastern start time. The Baylor Bears are minus 9.5 with the total at 141. But despite being the heavy favorite in this one, it's Baylor who failed to cover in their last 3 straight. And although there's really not much there to nitpick about Baylor, they're a great basketball team, but they have really struggled at the foul line this year. Baylor's making only 60% of their shots from the stripe, so I would just foul them. I just put them to the line. 60% shooting from the stripe. Not going to get it done, especially if you're a top-tier team. Now, they're taking on a red-hot TCU squad who won their last 7 straight, and they also successfully covered the point spread 6 times during that stretch. Now, the Horned Frogs are also undefeated at home still, and they're led by Mike Miles, who's scoring nearly 17 points a game, along with 3 rebounds and 4 assists. Meanwhile, Emmanuel Miller scoring nearly a dozen a game himself, along with 6 rebounds. The Horned Frogs are one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the nation. They currently find themselves in the top 5 in the country in that particular category. And when it comes to the total in this one, TCU's last 4 straight all got over the posted number. Meanwhile, Baylor, on the other side of things, they went 7-2 to the over in their last 9. I'm going to lean toward the underdog, TCU Horned Frogs, plus 9.5, and the over 141. Next contest, we're going to stay in the same conference, staying in the Big 12. I'm talking about Iowa State versus Oklahoma, and that's going to be a 6 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Oklahoma, the Sooners, are minus 6 with the total at 128.5. But despite being the 6-point favorite in this one, the Sooners are coming fresh off a double-digit loss to Baylor in their last outing. As a matter of fact, the Sooners have failed to cover the point spread recently against the likes of Kansas State, Alcorn State, and Houston Baptist. And in addition to failing to cover in 5 out of their last 8 home games, the Sooners are actually amongst the worst offensive rebounding teams in the Big 12. So certainly some problem areas if you're an Oklahoma backer in this spot here. Now, the Sooners are taking on an Iowa State team who's 13-1 overall for the season, and they successfully covered the point spread in 7 out of their last 10 ball games. Now, the Cyclones are limiting their competition to just 56 points a game. They're also holding their opponents to just 24% shooting from 3-land, which actually ranks in the top 3 in the entire country in that particular category. Now, scoring-wise, Isaiah Brockington is averaging over 16.5 points a game, along with 8 rebounds and 40% shooting from downtown. Meanwhile, Gabe Kalster is averaging double-digit points a game himself, along with 2 rebounds and a couple assists. Now, when it comes to the total in this one, 5 out of Iowa State's last 7 ball games fell under the posted number. Meanwhile, Oklahoma on the other side of things, they saw games recently with Alcorn State, Texas Arlington, and UCF fall under the line themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Iowa State plus 6 and the under 128.5. All right, next matchup, little SEC action. I'm talking about Tennessee versus LSU, and that's going to be a 6 o'clock Eastern start time. The LSU Tigers are minus 1.5 with the total at 136. And speaking of the total in this one, LSU's seen 80% of their home games this year fall under the posted number. The Tigers are also 12-2 to the under in their last 14 contests at any location. Meanwhile, their opponents, Tennessee, on the other side of things, they saw their last 3 straight fall under the line themselves. They also went 7-1 to the under in their last 8. And of course, when it comes to selecting a winner in this one, this game's actually being featured as my college basketball tier package pick on BrockPage.com. And the link for that pick is in the description section below. So if you want to see whether I'm leaning toward LSU getting the job done at home, or if I like the Volunteers in a slight upset here on the road, there's only one way to find out. And that's to sign up for membership. That's to sign up for my college basketball tier package. Sign up for my college basketball tier package pick on BrockPage.com. Once again, link for that pick is in the description section below. But as far as making a free pick, goes for this contest here, I'm going to lean toward the under 136 in that ball game. Way to really nail it home, Brock. You try to plug that package and you just completely stumble on your words. All right. All right, next contest. We're going to stay in the SEC. I'm talking about Florida versus Auburn, 8 o'clock Eastern tip-off. The Auburn Tigers are -7.5 with the total at 142. Now, the red-hot Auburn Tigers won their last 10 straight, and they successfully covered the point spread in 80% of those ball games I just mentioned. They also defeated the likes of South Carolina, LSU, and Nebraska during that stretch. The Tigers are averaging nearly 81 points a game, and they're led by Jabari Smith, who's scoring 15 points a game, and he's also shooting 44% from beyond the arc. Meanwhile, Wendell Green Jr. is averaging 12 points a game himself, along with 4 rebounds and 4 assists. And when it comes to defensive play, the Tigers allow just 58 points a game on their home court, and they're also in the top 20 in the country in defensive field goal percentage. Now, they're taking on a Florida team who's struggled to cover the point spread here recently. And as a matter of fact, the Gators failed to cover in 5 out of their last 7. And they're shooting just 31% from three land overall for the season. Now, when it comes to the scoring in this one, 3 out of Florida's last 4 ball games did get over the posted number. Meanwhile, Auburn, on the other side of things, they saw contests with South Carolina, Nebraska, and Syracuse get over the line themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Auburn -7.5 in the over 142. Next matchup, ACC action. I'm talking about Miami versus Duke, and that's going to be an 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Duke's the 15-point favorite in this one with the total at 153. But despite being absolutely dominant this season, the Blue Devils did fail to cover recently against Georgia Tech, Ohio State, and the Citadel. And although there really aren't many soft spots when it comes to this Duke team, they do tend to get out-rebounded on the defensive end of the court. That could be a potential problem area if you're a Duke backer here, laying 15 points. Now they're taking on a red-hot Miami team who scores 77 points a night themselves, and they also got the W in their last 8 straight. Cameron McGusty is scoring over 18 points a game, along with 6 boards and a couple assists. Now, Cam's also drilling 40% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, Charlie Moore is draining 40% of his 3 balls himself, along with 12 points a game. Now, the Canes are 12-3 in their last 15 contests, and they're making nearly 78% of their free throws on the road. When it comes to the total in this one, Miami went 5-0 to the over in their last 5 outings, 80% to the over in their last 10. Meanwhile, Duke saw 6 out of their last 10 get over the posted total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Miami +15 in the over 153. All right, next ball game, it is going to be UCLA versus Cal, 8 o'clock East. The UCLA Bruins are -9 with the total at 134. Now, the Bruins won their last 4 straight, 9-1 straight up in their last 10. UCLA is one of the best scoring teams in the country, as they're averaging 83 points a game, and they rank in the top 15 in shooting the 3-ball. Johnny Juzang is scoring over 16.5 points a game, along with 4 rebounds and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Jules Bernard is draining 46% of his shots from beyond the arc himself, 13 points a game for Bernard. And when it comes to the defensive play in this one, the Bruins are allowing only 63 points a game away from home, and they're limiting their competition to just 27% shooting from 3 land in that same category. They're taking on a Cal team who's averaging only 66 points a game themselves, and they're struggling to get rebounds offensively at home. Now, when it comes to the total in this one, 5 out of Cal's last 7 outings fell under the posted number. Meanwhile, UCLA went 5-1 at the under in their last 6. I'm going to lean toward UCLA -9 and the under 134. And with that, guys, now it's time for our quick pick recap. Powered to you by my website at brockpage.com, where we are 6-1 in our last 7 college football tier package picks. I like Seton Hall -4, under 139.5. Purdue -9.5, over 138. UNC -5, over 132. Oklahoma State +2.5, under 128. DePaul +8.5, over 137. Michigan State +2.5, over 142. Colorado State +3, under 134.5. Texas Tech +4.5, under 139. The TCU Horned Frogs +9.5, over 141. Iowa State Cyclones +6, under 128.5. I like the under 136 in the Tennessee LSU game. I also like Auburn -7.5, over 142. Give me the Miami Hurricanes +15, over 153. I also like the UCLA Bruins -9, under 134. And as far as all the other games go across the country here today, I like NC State -2, over 143.5. Give me Vanderbilt -6 and the over 139. Providence -3.5, over 147. Wichita State +12, under 132. New Hampshire -9, under 127.5. Dayton Flyers -8, under 132 and a hook. UMass Minutemen -4.5, over 148. Incarnate Word -1, over 143.5. Texas A&M -1, over 145. Chicago State +11, over 142 and a hook. Central Connecticut State +6, under 124.5. North Dakota State -9.5, over 149. VMI -5, under 133. Temple Owls -4.5, under 136. Hampton +15, under 133.5. IUPUI +22 and the under 134. West Virginia -8, under 130. Maine +16 and the under 131.5. Rutgers -7.5, over 142. Northern Illinois +19, under 137. Davidson -7.5, under 136. LIU, Long Island University, -5.5, over 148. Wake Forest -4.5, over 154. LaSalle Explorers +8, under 128.5. Northwestern State +4.5, over 154. UL Monroe +1, over 149 and a hook. Western Kentucky -11.5, over 139. Oral Roberts -1.5, over 159. Georgia Southern -3, under 129.5. Samford with an M -7, over 158.5. Missouri +14, over 149 and a hook. Eastern Michigan -2, over 150. Pitt Panthers -3.5, under 128. Bradley +14, under 135.5. Cal State Northridge -2.5, under 124. The Citadel +15, over 144.5. South Carolina State -3, over 152. Utah Valley -12.5, over 143. Bethune-Cookman -1.5, under 134. Long Beach State -1.5, over 147. UTSA, that's Texas San Antonio, the Roadrunners +14, over 145.5. Mercer +11, over 140. St. Francis, New York -1, under 128.5. Murray State Racers -12, over 142 and a hook. Give me Binghamton +1, under 133.5. Denver Pioneers -6, over 142 and a hook. Northern Colorado minus 11.5 over 143. The Tulane Green Wave minus 6.5 under 127. Tennessee State minus 2 over 158.5. Florida A&M plus 2 under 136 and a hook. Rice plus 9 under 148. Presbyterian minus 9.5 under 130. East Tennessee State plus 2 over 141.5. Belmont Bruins minus 16.5 over 151. Charleston Southern plus 13 under 148. Radford minus 3 under 134. Alabama A&M plus 1 under 125 and a hook. The Troy Trojans minus 1.5 under 134. Bowling Green plus 1.5 over 158. Austin Peay plus 8 over 137. North Florida minus 1 over 141.5. Alabama State plus 2.5 under 129. UMBC minus 2.5 under 148. Columbia plus 14 over 145. Princeton minus 6 over 159. Jacksonville minus 1 in the under 132 and a hook. Georgia Bulldogs plus 23 over 147. Texas A&M Corpus Christi minus 5 over 147. North Texas minus 10.5 under 125. Missouri State minus 4.5 in the over 142. Georgia Tech plus 1 under 135.5. Utah running Utes minus 2.5 over 144. Eastern Washington minus 13.5 over 156. Prairie View A&M minus 18 over 157 and a hook. Dartmouth plus 3.5 under 132. Eastern Kentucky plus 1.5 over 151. Marshall minus 4.5 over 147. Southern Utah minus 13 over 143. Abilene Christian minus 9.5 under 137. San Francisco Dons minus 16 under 133. South Dakota plus 17 over 153.5. Valpo minus 1.5 under 127. Louisiana Raging Cajuns minus 11 over 147. St. Louis Billikens minus 3.5 over 148. Florida State Seminoles minus 4.5 under 139. New Mexico State minus 10.5 over 150. Tarleton State plus 1.5 under 127. UC Riverside plus 1 under 123.5. UC Davis minus 4.5 under 138. New Mexico plus 6 over 153. Texas Southern minus 16 under 133. The Ole Miss Rebels plus 2.5 under 129. Nicholls State minus 5.5 over 150. North Alabama plus 5 under 133. Gonzaga Bulldogs minus 29 over 156.5. UTEP Miners minus 11.5 under 131. And with my next and final free pick for the video, I'm going to lean toward BYU minus 3 in the under 133. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on BrockPage.com. Now, if you guys do end up getting a membership here today on my website, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on BrockPage.com, you're going to get access to that content all the way through the end of January. I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. And if you want to get access to every single pick that I give out on that website, you may want to think about signing up for my board member package, where board members get access to every single pick that I give out on that website all the way through the end of January as well. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Saturday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at brockpage.com.